Mallards. It is Sunday, and I've got Kellen here because we're going to talk about the first 2 episodes of the Loki series. I will probably be talking about the last remaining 3. Is this only 5?
5 or 6.
Yeah, by myself because I won't be around Kellen, but I figured since we watched the first 2 together, we could talk about them together.
Yeah.
So, first, overall thoughts on how you feel about the series?
I think it's really good. I'm excited to see where it goes. I enjoyed the previous Marvel TV series, whether they be the Netflix ones or the ones on regular TV, because it gives you a lot more information about a small point in time. And I think the Disney Plus shows are doing a lot of the same thing, and this is really letting you dive into get way more information about Loki than you really would in any other time.
Yeah.
And the show just allows them the space to make a whole thing.
Yeah, and to explore a character that probably otherwise wouldn't be explored because, they killed him in Endgame.
Like 3 times.
Well, but really, really killed him in Endgame.
Yeah.
I also really like it. I also want to point out that my stages of grief theory still stands because the 3rd stage of grief is bargaining. And I think that is absolutely what Loki is desperately trying to do this entire series. So we had denial with WandaVision, and we had anger and pain with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and now we're on to bargaining. And I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there that depression is coming next. So Hawkeye, we're waiting for it. But I think the series is really fun. It's really interesting, too, to sort of step back away from the Loki that we've gotten used to and back into the Loki who was in Avengers.
Yeah.
The, angry... Just found out he's a frost giant, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, he found out he was a frost giant and then fell off of the Rainbow Bridge and basically landed in Avengers.
Yep.
So.
Mm-hmm. Which is at the end of the first Thor.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's just an angrier, very, very different Loki. And I think that that's kind of fun. Angrier and also, more full of himself. So I feel like Loki lost a lot of that, haughtiness.
I don't think he was any less full of himself in, Thor Ragnarok.
A different sort of full of himself. A different level of cocky. I feel like in Thor Ragnarok, he's got that sort of, he's cocky, but he's cocky because everyone expects him to be, and he's just being cool and sarcastic. But in Avengers, he's actually just thinks he's that awesome.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
So it's kind of fun to step back to that character. I think that that's been really interesting. And they did a scene where, so Loki is captured by the Time Variance Authority, the TVA, who basically, anybody who messes up the secret timeline gets pulled out. And he shows up and he's like, excuse me. I mean, yes, I took the Tesseract and, moved through space, but, the Avengers were literally time traveling, and you're telling me they're not the problem? And everyone was like, no, the Avengers were supposed to do that. It's part of the sacred timeline, so they're fine. Loki was like,
I call bullshit.
Excuse me? Yeah. I don't think this is fair. And you're right, it's not fair, because unfortunately, Loki, the Avengers are spoiled, and everybody does everything for them.
Pretty much, yep.
Yep. So he gets captured by the Time Variance Authority and essentially is helping them track down another Loki, which we figure out immediately, and he figures out eventually. Mm-hmm. But it's fun. Yeah, it's really fun to see this version of Loki, but one of the first things they do is show him his life. And watching the Loki from Avengers grapple with all of the things that Loki eventually lives through, and then also, the whole
not living through something.
Yeah. Whew, man.
Yeah.
What a scene that Tom Hiddleston did.
Yeah. Also, the reveal that he was D.B. Cooper.
Oh yeah, that was really funny. I liked that a lot, actually. And that it was just a bet that he lost to Thor. So he lost a bet and became D.B. Cooper. And that's really funny. Yeah, it's a fun series. What do you think about Owen Wilson?
Well, Owen Wilson. What more can you say than wow?
Which he doesn't say at all.
Yet.
We're in 2 episodes in and he hasn't said it. And there have been so many opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
They're just making us wait. But do you like... his character's name is...
Mobius.
Mm-hmm. Which is a thing, right? The Mobius strip.
Yeah. It's a strip of paper or whatever that has only one side.
Mm-hmm.
For
only one
confusing
timeline.
reasons.
The sacred timeline.
The sacred timeline. Yeah, it's really interesting to see. So the idea of the TVA is that they were created by these 3 timekeepers, and they spend their entire life basically inside the TVA, curating and making sure that everything is going to plan. So he's not like a normal person from Earth, or even pick any other planet. He's only ever been in the TVA. So it's interesting to see how like that mindset works.
Yeah, especially because they're also not in any time. They're outside time at all times. So their grasp of time is very, very different because time is happening continuously at all times for them. But Mobius has a jet ski magazine from the 1990s because he thinks that jet skis are the epitome of human creation. We also had the opportunity to travel to 2050 to an apocalypse where we learned that 2050
is an awful lot like 2020.
Maybe older than 20. They had some old.
Yeah.
So we went to a Rocks Cart Superstore, which, you know, by the way, want to start Rocks Cart? Apparently it gets real big. Let's do it right now. In the next 30 years, we could have one. I bet people would shop there.
Yeah, right up until 2050.
Yeah. But they had like super old style vacuum cleaners and robot dogs and all sorts of stuff, which I thought was really interesting. And I wonder if it's partially because the comics, I mean, I don't know much about the TVA and comics, haven't read a lot, but a lot of their technology inside the TVA is like very
60s retro futuristic kind of stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if that is also what the design is sort of feeling for everything, which I'm not upset with. It's kind of fun. It's also, though, a weird mixture. So all of their tech, like they're working on like really old style, like 80s computers.
Oh, speaking of their computers, one of the shots that you get is of a keyboard, and one of the subreddits that I follow, r/mechanical keyboard, kind of went wild because that is a very popular keyboard style right now. That particular one that they show
Interesting.
is a really popular one. So
yeah. So they're sort of 80s style computers, but then the tech that they wear and use as they're traveling through time has a much more modern feel.
Oh yeah.
Like the gear that they wear in their helmets and the little
they've got like a smart wrist strap and a stun stick and stuff. Yeah, very much modern.
Very, very modern.
Even futuristic for us.
Yeah. And I think that it's just interesting, the disparity between those two things. And I'm not sure why that is. Although Kellen and I, you know, if we're going to go into things we predict, we think the timekeepers are dead.
Yep.
And that the lady who is the judge, whose name I don't know, who Mobius goes to see continually, is just telling people what the timekeepers say, but they're not around anymore. And she knows it and maybe no one else does.
Yeah, or maybe they're not around, but they're no longer interested in curating the way that the TVA thinks they are, at least.
Yeah. We also think that it's all going to go terribly wrong and lead to a multiverse, which is how we're going to get to Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness.
What?
I know, shocking. And then I want to ask Helen for a prediction. I want to know if there are any regular MCU characters you think will cameo in this, and if so, who?
Well, there was a spot in the second episode that there was a cameo that definitely should have been Stan Lee if he was still alive.
Oh yeah, we did have that
there was
moment.
There's
where we're
a
like,
faux Stan Lee cameo. But I am actually, I'm going to make a slightly bold prediction, and I'm going to go with more Lokis.
oh yeah, I think there will also be, there's a reveal of a female Loki, which we're going to come back to that in just a second, at the end of the second episode. I think that more Lokis is good. My prediction, and this is a wild and out there one, it's just what I want a Lady Sif. You know, if
good.
I get to pull somebody from the other films, from any other film, Lady Sif. I also, though, really want Peggy Carter.
So, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan in me also wants to point out that at one point they directly talk about Coulson dying. I'm gonna go ahead and say Coulson shows up. Just in order to,
I like it,
to twist that knife a little bit. It could be that he shows up, like they travel to the past sometime when Coulson was a S.H.I.E.L.D. person. And it's not like the new alive again Coulson, but I'm gonna go with Coulson.
Kellen's got other Lokis and Phil Coulson, and I've got Lady Sif and Peggy Carter. And we'll see if any of us are even remotely right. So the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up this probably lengthy video is the idea is that there's a sacred timeline, and the sacred timeline is the Infinity Saga. And everything is supposed to unravel as we watched it happen in the Infinity Saga.
Pretty much beat for beat. There's apparently like some wiggle room in there, but yeah, it's pretty much exactly how the MCU movies went past. That's how it's supposed to be.
That's how it's supposed to be. Okay, so the variant Loki that they're chasing is...
Actually, so when they talk about variants, they show a bunch of variants of Loki as like a trollish looking one, an uglier looking one, and all of those different things. And then the one they're chasing is a female.
Blonde female Loki, who appears to be, I would like say for all intents and purposes, looks like the non-Frost giant version of Loki. Because she looks like the daughter of Odin and Frigga. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is interesting. The reason that's interesting is that Kellen and I assume that if the sacred timeline is the only one that's allowed to exist, then wouldn't they have stopped a female Loki
from existing?
Yeah. Or maybe it's just shape-shifting, because Loki can just shape-shift. And so he just decided to...
look like a girl?
Yeah.
It's possible.
So all the variants that look different are just Loki deciding to look different. Because they do show like a frost giant version of Loki too.
Yeah.
In that variant thing. But, so I'm curious to see how we're gonna balance this out. Or is it the actions and the story that matter, but there was the potential for the Loki to be female? Are there several different versions of the sacred timeline?
Yeah, is the problem really with the branches, not that it's creating a new timeline, but it's branching out in order to touch a different sacred timeline.
That's true, because there is this like moment where they can't bring things back. And so maybe that is crossing over to a different sacred timeline. So there's a sacred timeline where Loki is female and should be doing the things they're doing, but instead is bouncing around to different timelines, or has been a variation coming. I don't know. We're left with several questions, which they may or may not answer.
Well, they've got, 3 or 4 episodes to do it, so let's hope they do.
But at the end of the second episode, they blow up everything, so
yeah.
Who knows? It really doesn't matter, though, because no matter how it goes, we are excited to watch.
Yeah.
And I will see you tomorrow.